It finally happened and no one saw it coming. In a jaw-dropping court development that's sending shockwaves through Hollywood and beyond, Blake Lively just suffered a massive legal defeat. A key defendant in her high-profile case has officially been dismissed, and this one move might be the beginning of the end for her entire legal campaign. For months, Blake positioned herself as the victim, someone unfairly attacked, unjustly criticized, and forced to take legal action to protect her reputation. But now the court has just sent a chilling message: not everyone in her lawsuit even belonged there to begin with. And that raises serious questions about her evidence, her motives, and the real purpose behind this headline-grabbing case. Because, let's be real, when a court dismisses someone from a lawsuit, they're not just saying, "This person isn't guilty." They're saying this accusation never should have been made in the first place. And when your entire legal strategy starts to unravel in public, it becomes more than just a courtroom issue, it becomes a reputation crisis. This isn't some minor misstep, it's a major turning point. Insiders close to the case are calling it a strategic disaster. Legal analysts are already predicting a ripple effect that could shatter the credibility of the remaining claims. And content creators across YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, they're already sounding the alarm. What happens if more defendants are dismissed? What happens if this was just the first of many cracks in Blake Lively's carefully constructed narrative? Behind the scenes, sources say her team is in panic mode. Advisors are clashing, PR handlers are spinning. Some allies are even distancing themselves from the mess entirely. And the worst part, the defendant, who just walked away, might be gearing up to tell their story publicly with zero legal restrictions now holding them back. Imagine the impact if they go on record and say what really happened behind closed doors. This isn't just about a lawsuit anymore, this is about power control and the fragile image of a celebrity who may have gone too far to protect it. So what's next for Blake Lively? Could this entire legal case collapse? Could she face retaliation from those she tried to silence? Could the backlash from this dismissal cost her more than just courtroom credibility? In this video, we're breaking down every explosive detail: the court ruling, the public reaction, the Hollywood fallout, and why this could be the moment Blake Lively loses it all. Because when the judge dismisses your key player, the entire game changes. And trust us, this game has only just begun. It's the kind of plot twist even Hollywood couldn't write. Just when it seemed Blake Lively had the upper hand in her headline-grabbing legal saga, a bombshell court development has shifted the entire momentum. A defendant tied to the case has just been officially dismissed, sparking a flurry of questions, speculation, and finger-pointing across the entertainment and legal communities. While the broader public may not fully grasp the implications yet, those close to the case know this could spell serious trouble for Lively. Not only does it poke holes in the foundation of her legal narrative, but it also opens a floodgate of potential countersuits, public scrutiny, and reputational fallout. If Blake hoped to keep certain truths sealed under the veil of legal formality, that illusion may have just been shattered completely. Let's back up and understand what led us here. Blake Lively has spent the last several months embroiled in an intense and highly publicized legal conflict. The case, originally meant to be a tightly controlled courtroom affair, has spiraled into a media spectacle, fueled by leaks, cryptic social media posts, and whispers from Hollywood insiders. The drama has dominated entertainment headlines, and now it's entering a new phase. The recent court decision to dismiss one of the key defendants in the case marks a critical turning point. While the court's official reasoning is couched in legal terminology, insiders believe the move suggests serious flaws in Blake Lively's strategy, particularly in how her legal team framed the scope of the complaint and the connections between various parties involved. The dismissed defendant, previously accused of playing a significant role in the unfolding controversy, has now been cleared, at least in the eyes of the court. And that's not just a procedural win, it carries symbolic weight. It tells the public and other potential targets that Blake's case may not be as airtight as once portrayed. More importantly, it signals to everyone watching that the cracks are forming, and they're getting harder to patch. From the very beginning, Lively's legal push was met with resistance. There were questions about motive, timing, and even transparency. What started as a straightforward defamation claim quickly evolved into something much bigger, drawing in creators, former friends, legal commentators, and eventually powerful media outlets. It felt like everyone was picking sides, and suddenly Blake's camp seemed to be shrinking. That shrinking circle has now suffered another blow. The dismissed defendant's legal team didn't just quietly exit the scene, they left with a statement. According to people familiar with the matter, their response to the dismissal included not-so-subtle criticisms of how the entire case was built. Terms like overreach, misrepresentation, and lack of evidence were reportedly mentioned in court documents, adding to the perception that Blake's team may have stretched too far. And here's the kicker: legal analysts are now questioning whether the dismissal could trigger a domino effect. If this one defendant can walk away, what's stopping others from challenging their own involvement? What happens if more dismissals follow? Could it unravel the entire case while it's still too early to make definitive predictions? The writing on the wall is becoming harder to ignore. Hollywood insiders are buzzing with fresh gossip. Some claim that Blake was caught off guard by the court's ruling. Others suggest her PR team is scrambling to reframe the situation, trying to downplay the loss while amplifying unrelated wins. But it's clear that behind closed doors there's a growing sense of urgency. Too many. This dismissal represents more than a procedural hiccup. It could be the beginning of the end for a case that's already pushed reputations to the brink. And make no mistake, reputations are at the heart of this story. Blake Lively, once viewed as the elegant, unshakable star of both screen and society, now finds herself under a level of scrutiny she likely never anticipated. Critics argue that her legal maneuvers have alienated fans, confused collaborators, and even drawn quiet criticism from some fellow celebrities. Each legal loss chips away at the image she once carefully curated. But while the headlines may focus on Blake, this latest twist also raises big questions about accountability and fairness in high-profile cases. Can celebrities use the court system to control narratives? Is this about justice or image management? And what happens when those efforts backfire? The court's dismissal might just be the answer. Observers note that the judge's tone during the ruling was measured but firm. Without disparaging Blake directly, the court emphasized the importance of well-grounded legal reasoning and responsible party inclusion. In other words, throwing names into a lawsuit without concrete evidence won't cut it. That subtle yet significant rebuke has not gone unnoticed. Already, legal influencers on social media are dissecting every word of the ruling. TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube are flooded with commentary, with creators calling the dismissal a massive blow, an undeniable momentum shift. The online narrative is swinging and fast. Even mainstream outlets that were once cautiously supportive of Blake's position are starting to hedge their bets. One entertainment journalist tweeted, "A defendant just walked. It's not nothing. This is the part where the pressure intensifies." And intensify it will. With this dismissal, the court may have set a precedent. Other individuals named in the case could now file similar motions, citing lack of involvement or insufficient grounds. If the court grants more dismissals, Blake's case could be stripped down to its bare bones, leaving her exposed and isolated. And then comes the real risk: countersuits. Legal experts suggest that individuals who were dragged into the case without solid evidence could seek damages. If even one countersuit is filed, it could open up a discovery process that Blake's team may not want. Internal emails, behind-the-scenes strategy discussions, confidential texts, it could all be on the table for a public figure like Blake Lively, whose reputation has long been built on elegance and discretion. The idea of her private legal and PR correspondence going public is a nightmare scenario. Still, the actress has remained silent. No official statement has been released in response to the dismissal. Her legal team has also declined to comment. But silence speaks volumes, and right now it's deafening as we await Blake's next move. One thing is certain: this isn't just about one dismissal. It's about the larger narrative unraveling. Each legal defeat, no matter how small it might seem on paper, erodes the story Blake Lively has been telling, and as more pieces fall away, the spotlight turns back on her. There are whispers that certain allies are distancing themselves, that production teams are reconsidering associations, that endorsement deals, while still in place, are being reevaluated. None of this has been confirmed, but the timing is hard to ignore. The entertainment industry, for all its glamour, is ruthlessly driven by image. When that image cracks, it's not long before the opportunities start to fade. This dismissal, though just one court decision, may be the warning shot. And if Blake Lively doesn't course correct quickly, she could soon find herself not just on the losing side of a legal battle, but on the outside of an industry she once ruled. As word of the dismissal spread across Hollywood, the immediate reaction was one of stunned silence, quickly followed by a wave of chatter behind closed doors. Publicists scrambled to recalibrate messaging, and lawyers on all sides were put on high alert. Those who had previously assumed Blake Lively's legal campaign was unstoppable are now reevaluating everything. What does it mean when a court throws out a central figure in a high-profile case like this? For many insiders, the answer is chilling. It means the court isn't buying the full narrative, and that's dangerous ground for any celebrity relying on public support. But perhaps the most surprising reaction came from those close to Blake herself. Sources say there was a noticeable shift in her inner circle. After the news broke, whispers of uneasy subtle exits from group chats postponed public appearances. Even unreturned calls from allies who had once been front and center. Blake, known for maintaining a tight-knit group of friends and confidants, is reportedly feeling the effects of a Hollywood that's watching and waiting. The loyalty she once commanded is no longer guaranteed, and for someone who has built her career not just on talent but on image, that erosion of support is seismic. Let's talk about the defendant who was dismissed, though their name is being kept relatively low profile by mainstream media, likely due to legal precautions. The dismissed individual was painted by Blake's legal filings as an active participant in the broader scandal. Court documents previously implied a level of involvement that, according to this latest ruling, simply could not be substantiated. Legal observers note that the judge didn't just remove the defendant on a technicality. The dismissal was framed as a decision based on lack of convincing evidence. That's a serious critique of how the case was constructed. And it gets worse for Blake. The same defendant had reportedly offered to provide testimony that could have helped both sides clarify certain events, but instead of seeing them as a neutral figure or cooperative witness, Blake's team chose to include them as a defendant, possibly as a preemptive legal strategy to control the narrative. If that's true, the strategy may have spectacularly backfired. Not only has the court rejected their inclusion, but now this individual could come forward with their own side of the story, free from the constraints of being legally tied to the case. And if they choose to speak publicly, they could reveal things that Blake's camp would prefer remain in the shadows. Hollywood thrives on stories, and the most dangerous stories are the ones you can't control. Already rumors are swirling that this dismissed individual has been contacted by at least 2 major streaming platforms interested in securing exclusive interview rights. Whether they accept remains to be seen, but even the idea that they could speak out has Blake's team reportedly on edge. Here's where things get even more complicated, because this dismissal doesn't just weaken Blake's legal argument. It may also expose deeper vulnerabilities in the foundation of the case. Specifically, it raises questions about the thoroughness of the investigation behind the lawsuit. Did her team truly understand the connections they were alleging? Were they working with accurate information or just speculation? If the latter is true, the entire lawsuit could be in jeopardy. Behind the scenes, some legal professionals are reportedly reviewing their own involvement. One source close to the situation mentioned that certain legal advisors are now reconsidering whether they want to remain tied to the case. That's a major red flag. If legal representation begins to fracture, the structure of the case could quickly collapse. And let's not forget the media dimension. Blake's legal team has in past months tried to enforce strict control over what could be said about the case, issuing warnings, pushing back on commentary, and even threatening potential legal action against online content creators. But this court dismissal may embolden others to speak up. Legal experts argue that when a judge dismisses part of a lawsuit, especially for being overreaching or unfounded, it weakens the ability of the plaintiff to claim defamation over related commentary. In other words, if the court itself doubts the credibility of a specific accusation, then public discussion about that doubt becomes far more defensible. We're already seeing signs of this shift. Several YouTube legal analysts who had previously tread carefully around the topic have now started posting more boldly. One prominent creator titled their latest video, "Blake's Case Just Cracked: Why This Dismissal Could Change Everything." Another posted, "Is the entire lawsuit at risk?" Now let's talk about the dismissal. The public appetite for transparency is growing, and Blake may find it harder to shield herself from uncomfortable truths. That brings us to a broader and perhaps more philosophical question. Why was this case filed in the first place? Was it truly about righting a wrong, or was it about narrative control, silencing critics, and preserving a public image? Some critics suggest that Blake Lively's lawsuit was always about managing perception, more than securing justice. And if that's true, the dismissal of this defendant is devastating, not just legally, but symbolically. Because if even one element of the case is built on shaky ground, the public may begin to question the validity of all the claims. We've seen it before in Hollywood. One misstep in a carefully controlled PR campaign and the whole structure comes tumbling down. The entertainment world is unforgiving, and audiences are more savvy than ever. They can sense when something doesn't add up. Right now, a growing number of fans, followers, and neutral observers are watching Blake's case with fresh eyes. They're asking new questions, they're digging deeper, and the answers they're finding aren't flattering. There's also an emerging narrative around power imbalance. Many online voices are starting to frame the story as a classic example of celebrity overreach, where a powerful public figure uses the court system to intimidate or punish those with less influence. And now that the court has pushed back, those same voices are rallying around the idea that accountability works both ways. If Blake's team hoped the lawsuit would discourage public criticism, this dismissal may have the opposite effect. It might actually encourage more criticism because it suggests that the legal playing field isn't tilted entirely in her favor, and let's not ignore the timing. This dismissal comes at a moment when Blake is preparing for several major professional moves. Sources indicate she's in talks for a high-budget streaming project with the negotiations reportedly in the final stages. But high-profile projects require clean reputations. And now she finds herself in the middle of legal controversy that's spiraling fast. Studios, brands, and investors don't like unpredictability. And with this case now producing unexpected outcomes, there's a growing concern that Lively's legal strategy could endanger her upcoming opportunities. She may be forced to choose protect the case or protect her career. Both options carry risk. If she doubles down on the case, more scrutiny will follow, along with potentially more dismissals. Or worse, a judge outright questioning her team's conduct. But if she withdraws, it might appear like an admission of failure or exaggeration. And that could lead to reputation damage anyway. It's a lose-lose situation unless she finds a third path, something strategic, quiet, and focused on damage control, and that, according to insiders, may already be underway. There are unconfirmed reports that Blake's PR team is working on a pivot. Instead of fighting every claim head-on, they may shift toward a more healing and understanding narrative. A story that frames Blake not as an aggressor but as someone who acted out of emotional pain, seeking peace rather than punishment. Whether that pivot will be accepted by the public is unclear. The court's latest ruling, however, makes it clear that the legal route will only become more treacherous from here on out. As the smoke clears from this week's courtroom bombshell, one thing is certain: Blake Lively is now playing defense whether she wants to or not. As we move deeper into the fallout of this legal bombshell, the story is no longer just about the dismissal. It's about what the dismissal represents. It's about perception, it's about integrity, and it's about how quickly the winds of public sentiment can turn against even the most polished celebrity figures. Blake Lively has long been a symbol of poise, control, and grace in Hollywood. But those qualities are now being tested in an environment that is anything but forgiving. Behind the glamour and perfectly curated social media posts lies a legal and reputational crisis that threatens to undo years of carefully managed public image building. The question many are now asking is this: did Blake Lively overplay her hand? In the world of high-stakes litigation, timing is everything, strategy is everything, and most importantly, evidence is everything. This recent dismissal suggests a major miscalculation on one or more of those fronts. Sources close to the situation have begun to acknowledge that the scope of Blake's lawsuit may have been far too broad from the beginning. What may have initially been a strong claim centered on one or two key actors somehow ballooned into a sprawling complaint that named multiple parties, each with varying degrees of involvement or lack thereof. It's a classic legal trap over inclusion. By attempting to cast a wide net, Blake's legal team may have opened the door for sharper scrutiny. Judges don't appreciate cases that appear to be built more on conjecture than hard evidence. And that's exactly what this recent ruling reflects. What makes the situation more precarious is that the dismissed defendant was one of the more sympathetic figures in the narrative, a party seen by many as someone caught in the crossfire. That sympathy is now turning into support, and support is turning into vocal opposition. Already the dismissed individual has gained traction online. They've begun to attract media attention not as a villain but as a misunderstood figure, wrongfully targeted in an overzealous lawsuit. Their name, once tied to the controversy, is now being spoken with empathy. That shift in public framing could become a major problem for Blake. In Hollywood, perception is often more powerful than truth. If the public begins to believe that Blake's lawsuit was at least in part an attempt to silence criticism or control a media narrative, her moral standing in this case evaporates. And without moral standing, legal victories mean very little, especially when your career depends on public goodwill. There's another layer to this developing mess: the internal conflict within Blake's team. While the public only sees polished press releases and smiling red carpet photos behind the scenes, multiple sources are reporting deep tensions between legal advisors and PR strategists. According to insiders, the PR team has grown increasingly concerned that the lawsuit's trajectory is damaging Blake's long-term brand. One source put it bluntly: they think the case should never have gone this far. They wanted to settle it quietly, but someone insisted on making a point. That someone, many assume, refers to members of Blake's inner legal circle, perhaps even Blake herself. It's not uncommon for high-profile individuals to push for aggressive legal strategies out of frustration, hurt, or even embarrassment. But as this case is proving aggressive doesn't always mean effective. And now the consequences are snowballing. Not only has Blake lost ground in the courtroom, but she's also beginning to lose her grip on the public narrative. Hashtags critical of the lawsuit are gaining traction. Commentators are uploading hour-long breakdowns of the court's decision. Former supporters are suddenly silent. It's a chilling shift, especially for someone used to having near-universal support. And it gets more serious. Legal scholars are now analyzing the ruling and suggesting that the dismissal may hint at constitutional concerns. Specifically, some argue that the original claims may have brushed up against First Amendment issues, particularly regarding freedom of speech and protected commentary. If that argument gains traction, it could embolden more content creators, journalists, and even fans to speak openly about the case without fear of legal reprisal. And that's a PR nightmare for anyone trying to keep sensitive information under wraps. But Blake isn't just losing control of the narrative externally. There's also a growing sense that she's losing control internally. Reports have emerged of a key advisor stepping away from the case. While no public statement has been issued, the departure is raising eyebrows. In high-profile cases like this, any exit, even a quiet one, can signal disagreement, doubt, or concern about where things are headed. And when combined with the broader perception of instability, it reinforces the idea that Blake Lively is not only under pressure but under siege. It's hard to overstate how quickly the tone around this case has shifted. When the lawsuit was first filed, it was framed by major outlets as a bold, empowering move. Blake taking a stand against falsehoods, protecting her reputation, and demanding accountability. But now the story is being read through a much different lens. One of overreach, potential misuse of legal power, and unexpected vulnerability. The shockwaves from the dismissal aren't just reverberating through her legal team, they're hitting her professional world too. As we touched on earlier, Blake was set to lead a massive new streaming project, rumored to be the centerpiece of a multi-year deal with one of the top 3 platforms. But according to newly leaked memos, executives are growing cautious. There are whispers that the production timeline may be delayed, that contracts are being re-reviewed, that contingency plans are being discussed. This is the ripple effect of legal missteps in modern Hollywood. One wrong move, one bad headline, and entire business ventures can be placed on hold. And it's not just professional risk, it's financial too. Blake's lawsuit wasn't cheap. Legal experts estimate that the combined costs of filings, counsel, discovery, and potential settlements could run into the 7-figure range, especially if more defendants are dismissed and countersue for damages. Remember, a dismissal doesn't just mean case closed, it often opens the door to retaliation. Already, legal analysts are predicting that the dismissed defendant could consider a malicious prosecution claim. That's an action someone takes when they believe they were wrongfully dragged into a lawsuit without merit. And if even one of those claims succeeds, it could shift the financial burden entirely onto Blake and her legal team. That possibility has her legal advisors reportedly reassessing risk. Sources familiar with the internal conversations say that the team is split. Some want to continue fighting, others are urging settlement or even withdrawal from certain parts of the case. But Blake, at least for now, appears to be standing firm. Publicly, she's offered no signal of retreat, no interviews, no statements, just silence. And that silence is being filled by others: critics, commentators, creators, and court watchers, who are now controlling the narrative. As we prepare for the next court appearance, all eyes are on Blake Lively. Will she pivot and attempt to salvage the case through quiet backdoor agreements? Will more defendants seek dismissal? Will public pressure force a change in strategy? Or will she double down, fighting harder than ever to regain control of a case that seems to be slipping through her fingers? The entertainment industry is watching. So are the fans. And so are those who've been caught in the crossfire, many of whom now feel vindicated by the court's latest move. One thing is for certain, this story is far from over. As we close out this chapter in the unraveling saga of Blake Lively's legal battle, one thing is painfully clear: this wasn't just a procedural setback. It was a symbolic collapse.